Welcome to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. Join Reiki Master and Quantum Healing expert Wes Coons as he guides listeners through the depths of self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment to uncover the version of you we haven't met yet. Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad, Behind the Scenes. So this is where we're going to go a little bit more in depth into what you've been listening to in season 1, episode 1. Wes, thank you for sharing some more details about your story.
Thanks, Andrea. It's my pleasure. You know, there's so many layers to this. I think this part's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think one of the first things that strikes me is when you're recounting your tale about being in Marine Corps boot camp, you talk a lot about Jacobs. And I think our listeners would be interested to know, can you tell us a little bit more about him? What's the story with this guy?
Sure. Jacobs was held back in boot camp. So if you fail something, you're dropped back to another unit. Marine Corps boot camp's about 3.5 months long. And this guy had been there 6 months already. And I think it's fair to say he didn't have the mental capacity that one would need to do the work that we do and be in the Marine Corps. And he was just a little slow, and he was a nice young man, but he was just significantly struggling with everything.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know where Jacobs is today.
You know, I've thought about that a lot. You know, one of the things we talk about in the memoir is there came to be a point where, you know, if one person makes a mistake in the unit, we all pay. And this poor kid made a lot of mistakes. And so, you know, one night, the other Marines or recruits basically beat him up pretty good, getting him to kind of pay attention. You got to remember, you know, being in the Marines is, we have a specific job to do, and it could be a little dangerous if you can't keep up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it sounds like Jacobs had a hard time with that.
He did, and I often wondered what's happened to him in his life. Now, I did not participate in that event with him. However, I was in the rack beneath him when that happened. And, you know, it's bothered me. It's been 30 plus years. And I think about that often.
Yeah. And so 30 plus years. Yeah. You took us way back in the first episode.
Hey, I hate the fact that I can say I can go that far back. But yeah, it was, that day was interesting. That day was unique, and it had to be outlined. It had to be, discussed to make everything come together.
Yeah. And another thing you mentioned in the memoir, and you're talking about the Marines and boot camp, is adapt and overcome. How has that, unfolded throughout your life?
Sure. You know, in the Marine Corps, one of the things they teach us from day number 1 is we're not going to have a bunch of cool tools. We're not going to have a budget for training. We're not going to have a lot of things. You know, we win by being, quite frankly, aggressive and violent and working harder than other people. And when we don't have the tools necessary, we adapt and overcome. And, when you're going into combat and they need you to take a hill or go into this building and do something, you have to just dig deep and push through.
Yeah, and we're going to push through. I don't know if you can hear that, but Wes's dog is eating in the background. So we're going to adapt and overcome and just go to the next question. So you had to adapt and overcome in Marines, and then we fast forward. You're telling us about the haunted house, and there's one thing that stuck out to me that I wonder if the listeners thought about too. You're talking about a demon ripping through the wallpaper. Now I have to ask, is this literally ripping through the wallpaper, or is this something you're seeing in your mind?
Sure. That's a great question. No, it wasn't literally ripping the walls open. However, for whatever reason, I was so energetically open at that time. I could touch a child's toy and they would show me, the vision that I would see in my mind is of that child playing with the toy. And I remember I was at my friend Sandra Grace Brooks' house for dinner one night, and I touched this antique berry picker. It was made out of wood. And I remember touching it, and it showed me the woman using it to pick the berries, and I could taste the berries. So basically, these gifts that God gave me, these psychic abilities, these different things that were coming to me that I didn't understand at the time, were so overwhelming and so powerful. Everything turned on for me instantly. And so as I would look at the wall, you're basically seeing in other dimensions. That house, those ghosts, those demons were so powerful, especially in the house. You could look across the room and you could see teeth chattering at you. You could see this black smoke pouring off the pool table. And obviously there was not real black smoke off the table, but there was real black smoke coming off the table in another dimension. And so you would see them coming through the mirrors. You would see them standing in the hallway next to you. And my family thought I was crazy and wanted me to go to an institution. I said I would. However, I was taking pictures of these things, and I said, if I didn't have the photo of it, I would go, but why don't you explain to me what's in the picture? And that's something that you guys are going to see at some point in time.
Yeah, and I've seen a few of these, so you guys are in for, this is not some made-up story. This is real life, and I think that's the fascinating and scary and wonderful and just beautiful part of this is, Wes is giving us a glimpse into something that not everyone has experienced, but that is going to really be a journey for you guys. And I have to say, you said, you could see them coming through the mirrors. And in that first episode, you mentioned covering up the mirrors and the TVs.
Yeah. I don't know what was significant about the mirrors and the TVs, but I would look over and you would see them sticking their heads out. And that one looked like Roy Orbison. And it looked just like him. So it was interesting to see. But at the same time, I say interesting, it was freaking terrifying. I was scared. Being in the Marine Corps, one of the titles we received in World War I think it was 1918, is the Germans called us devil dogs. They said when they fought the United States Marine Corps that we came at them, they thought that the devil himself had opened the door to hell, and the Marines came and devastated them. So, you've got this mental toughness, this willingness to walk towards gunfire, and not everybody has that. And so you're in this situation, this position where you can't see what's attacking you. I've never been so scared before in my life. And it's easy to say, I'm scared to go to work, or I'm scared to get married, or something like that. But I'm talking about a fear that gets in your bones, that changes your soul. And that's what this process was for me. It was horrific. And I knew later, after it was over, the reason it had to be so difficult for me is the healing work that I do today and the things that I can heal people with and remove demonic energies from homes and things of that nature, because we're going to talk about that in the future. But I'm a Reiki Master Quantum Healer, and I do a lot of this work. And, everything was put in place for me to become the person I'm supposed to today. And it's been a beautiful, scary, and sometimes terrifying journey.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to this story and to your awakening, into your healing work. And what you guys are hearing now, this is just the beginning. And that's why we wanted to do a little Q&A behind the scenes, because to let you know, it's not just a story. There's so much to tell that you couldn't possibly cover it all in a podcast. Like what Wes has experienced and where he has been and where he is now and where he's going is just, it's a ride you guys need to take.
Yeah. And Andrea, somebody said to me one day, how are you going to convince people? And I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm here to tell a story. And if they want to believe it, that's great. If they don't want to believe it, that's great. However, it's a story, and it's a real story, and it's a story about a man finding himself, a man being broken down to a level that, I think many people can't come back from. And I was lucky to be able to come back from it. And then it turns into a story of hope. And then it turns into a story of, God has given you these gifts, and what are you going to do with it? And I'm looking forward to getting to that part of how we do healing work on ourselves and each other, and how powerful our words are, and how we become the people we're supposed to be. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fascinating. However, we've got to start with the darkness, because there's people listening right now that are struggling, that are not understanding who they are, that are not becoming the person that they want to be. And they're going to find hope in this series. They're going to learn tools that they can implement themselves to be better. And that is going to be so much fun. And I don't know if you can hear my 6-month-old, 54-pound German Shepherd playing with her toy, but she's back there. Her name is Abigail.
Yeah, and she is amazing, and this story is amazing. I'm so grateful that you are not only telling the story, but giving us this behind-the-scenes glimpse into more detail. Thank you, Wes. I really appreciate it.
And Andrea, the next episode, we're starting from the beginning. It's going to be really fun.
All right, let's do it. You've been listening to Enlightenment Unknown with Wes Coons, your guide on the quest for self-discovery and the version of you we haven't met yet.